At dawn, this coop is empty. No feathers moving, just feathers on the grass. You will see exactly what walked in here and what it actually cost. One line in this year's ledger outspent the feed, the stock, and the seed combined. No store sold it, and no receipt explains what it was. Here's the contract, honest numbers, not the postcard. The land keeps an honest ledger, whether you're watching or not. Now rewind to the day none of this existed yet. A young couple signs the papers on a folding table, not a bank counter. To them, it is a legal fact on a county map, nothing more. They walk the edge of it together, counting steps instead of dollars. Stakes go into the ground. String stretches between them. Nobody at that folding table asks what already lives past that tree line. Roughly a quarter acre, string, stakes, and a signature. That's the whole first bill. That bill will look small by the time the coop goes up. The string they stretched today will decide what a fence can stop later. For now, it's just a young couple and a bare quarter acre. The papers are signed, the line is marked with string, and nobody budgeted for what already lives in that tree line. Nobody budgeted for what lives in the tree line. Turns out nobody budgeted for the ground itself either. Buy the acreage, the brochure says, and every other problem solves itself. Then the well report arrives, and the acreage stops being a picture. Drilling past 200 feet in this county runs past $10,000 before the pump goes in. That's before the water rights filing, which in most western states is a separate legal fight from owning the dirt above it. Skip that filing, and the water under your own field can legally belong to someone downstream. A line on a map. A line in the budget. Neither one drawn by the buyer. Fencing the perimeter of a modest homestead in cedar post and wire runs several $1,000s in materials alone. None of that number showed up at closing. The ground itself has been failing this promise for over a century and a half. This claim filing promised the land free after 5 years of proving up the soil. This claim promised free land after 5 years of proving up the soil. It never promised the well past July. Thousands of claims were abandoned for exactly that reason, not for lack of will. A dry well doesn't care how hard you worked, or how badly you needed it to. Today the fix is a $100 water test before you sign, not a dry summer to find out. Price the fence and the water test before a single animal comes home. The wire around the garden plot is thin and mostly good intentions. That's the same gap something slipped through 160 years ago. That same thin wire around the garden plot has another job now, feeding the people behind it. A garden this size, the seed catalog promises, ends every grocery run for good. These raised beds fill one adult's plate through August, not 4 mouths through January. Seedlings, netting, and deer fencing get bought before the first tomato ever ripens. That netting alone runs close to $200 before a single seed hits dirt. The tomato vines don't care about any of that math. They just grow. Rabbits get through the low gaps. Groundhogs go under, not over. Bury the wire a foot down, or the fence is just decoration with a gate on it. Squash bugs and blight cost a second round of seedlings most beginners never budget for. Replacing a bed of squash mid-July means another trip to the nursery, another receipt. Even the honest ledger has good days. This one's a full harvest basket. During the Second World War, backyard plots like this one were called victory gardens. They grew a real share of the nation's produce, and government pamphlets still had to teach the yield math. The myth of easy abundance was already old even then. Back in Vermont, the ledger still needs one more line. Pest defense, budgeted, not an afterthought. Price the fence and the netting with the seed order, and the garden earns its keep honestly. This fence keeps the rabbits out well enough. It was never built for what comes for the coop next door. The garden fence stopped the rabbits. It was never built for what came next, out of the tree line. 3 hens, a used coop, a bag of feed, eggs every morning, free, forever. That was the plan. The coop itself runs about $300 built cheap before a single hen moves in. Then feed, bedding, and a vet call for a limping hen add up faster than the eggs ever pay back. Then, one September night, the latch gave. A raccoon got in before the fence ever mattered. 1 hen gone. The coop repair alone cost more than a month of eggs. She fixed the latch. She thought that was the end of it. By November, a fox found the same weak seam in the run's wire, lower down, near the ground. 2 more hens lost. Restocking them cost twice what the flock's eggs had earned back all fall. So the fence from the first day of the year finally got dug in, post by post, hardware cloth buried deep. That buried wire is what the paperwork fence from day one was always supposed to become. It held against the ground. It did nothing against what came from above, in broad daylight. 1 hen taken in daylight. That single afternoon cost more than the coop itself had, new. Netting over the run, a covered roof panel, the last repair bill of the flock's first year. In 1941, a wartime push called Hens for Defense told households nationwide to keep backyard flocks. A documented share of those new coops failed within the year, to the same raccoons, foxes, and disease outbreaks. Same optimism, same fence gap, 80 years apart. For a typical first year, predator losses alone run somewhere between $200 and $400, the single costliest line on the page. That number is now the biggest line in the book, and the coop still needs restocking before the year is half over. The repair fund is gone, the coop is finally quiet, and the same math is already waiting in the kitchen. Fill a shelf with home-canned jars, folks say, and winter feeds itself for free. That jar only stays food, not poison, because of a machine most beginners never budget for. A pressure canner built to hold a safe temperature runs about $200, not the thrift store water bath jar on a shelf. New lids for every batch, a jar lifter, a magnetic wand for the rings, none of it reusable the way the jars themselves are. A lid used twice is a lid that no longer seals. The postcard never mentions that part. Rush the pressure or skip the gauge check, and the risk isn't spoiled taste. It's botulism, a hospital trip, not a folktale. A thermometer costs about $15. A guess costs more. Then there's the root cellar itself, not a myth of packed dirt and luck, but 5 feet of earth built to hold one steady temperature. In 1809, Nicolas Appert found that sealed, heated jars kept food from spoiling, decades before anyone understood why. The method crossed the Atlantic and settled into American kitchens that same century. Through the Depression, a cellar holding a steady 38 degrees fed a family through January. Not folklore, just packed earth and depth. No electricity kept that cellar cold, just depth and a door that sealed tight. A cellar built right today runs into real carpentry and drainage costs. This is a structure, not a corner of the basement. The shelf is full for the first time all year. The coop 2 chapters back never got the chance to fill anything. A full shelf is real food, but the equipment, the lids, the timber, all still have to be paid for before the jar seals. That cellar shelf finally filled itself. The workshop out back is still waiting its turn. Cut the power line and the whole bill disappears. That's the sales pitch. The ledger says otherwise. The panels were the cheap part. A basic off-grid setup for one homestead runs several $1,000s before a single tool gets plugged in. Then the generator for cloudy weeks, fuel, oil changes, a carburetor that clogs every winter. Add the tools themselves, and the real bill shows up in the repair drawer. A chainsaw needs a new chain most seasons. A tiller belt snaps mid-row, usually in the busiest week. None of it announces itself in advance. Set those small charges side by side for a year, and they read like a second mortgage nobody signed for. This is not a new complaint. In 1936, most farms in this country had none of it at all. The Rural Electrification Act of 1936 financed the poles and wire that finally reached isolated farms. Before that wire arrived, those same farms paid for staying off it. Kerosene, hand pumps, engines run ragged. Off-grid today just moves that same cost back onto the homestead's own ledger in fuel and parts instead of a bill. Price a repair fund before you price the tools. That number belongs in the budget, not the surprise column. The generator finally runs quiet again tonight. That repair fund it just emptied was meant for next spring's fence. The repair fund is empty tonight. So is the space on the page still waiting for a final line. Tonight, every column from the whole year gets added into one number. Land and Water opened the book. Well test, survey, first fence run. The garden added its own line. Netting, deer fencing, seedlings replaced twice. Then the coop line. Raccoon, then fox, then hawk, the single costliest column in the whole book. That number alone paid for more than the birds ever laid in eggs. Preserving added a pressure canner, a dozen lids, and the cellar shelving to hold it all. Tools and power closed it out. A generator repair, a fence still owed for spring. Add every column honestly, and the sum isn't a disaster. It's just arithmetic nobody did first. This same honest math caught up with a much bigger wave of newcomers once before. In the 1970s, Back to the Land pulled crowds off the city grid onto cheap rural acreage. A real share of them were gone again within a few years, once the ledger caught up with the dream. It wasn't the work that broke them. It was the arithmetic they never wrote down. Write it down first, and the same arithmetic just becomes a number you can plan around. The total lands in plain figures at the bottom of the page. A full year's honest reckoning. That number buys a year of land, animals, and jars on a shelf. It won't tell you if it was worth it. That final number on the page won't tell you if it was worth it. Only a checklist will. First honest question. How many hours a week does this actually take in the season you dread most? Winter chores run close to 2 hours a day here. Feeding, water lines, hauling wood, checking fence. No vacation covers that. Someone feeds the animals every single day, rain or funeral. Second question. Is there a cash cushion, or does one bad month become the whole year's failure? Every line this year, fence, feed, jars, fuel, shares one trait. It comes back next year too. The single biggest recurring line was never feed or fence. It was what the coop lost to the tree line. That gap is closed now. It cost more to learn than it would have to fix in spring. The property line marked with string and stakes on closing day is now wire, posts, and a locked gate. Back during the war, Hens for Defense posters promised backyard flocks would feed the whole block. That poster never mentioned the raccoon, the fox, or the hawk. This ledger finally does, in writing. Third question on the checklist. Can you lose an animal, a crop, or a jar batch without quitting the whole plan? That coop shelf was bare in the opening frame of this whole story. Tonight, it holds eggs and jars both. It was never fated to stay a ruin. It just needed to be an honest line item from day one. The land keeps an honest ledger, whether you're watching or not. Which line in your own budget would have surprised you most? Tell us in the comments.